So anyway, so there's you know, a pretty simple program here. We've got this main down here. The main program, if you know, once it's called that way, calls up to that main. Main calls another function called one calls a function called two calls long loop, and we're gonna use PDB to jump around inside this thing and get a feel for what PDB is. I'm gonna reactivate. Okay, now I've got the environment I want.
And this was the virtual env wrapper that it's just a way of managing these environments that we were creating that, you know, different modules, different versions of modules. And, you know.
Yep. So that's actually a really important thing because were you using like a regular, not the wrapper, you were using just virtual env?
In class, we were using, the students were using virtual env, and I, a couple times, demonstrated virtual env wrapper.
Yeah, okay. So it's the same thing effectively, but it's just virtual env wrapper. The commands are a little, there's a little more, it keeps all your virtual environments in one place so you don't have to go hunting, and I've been using it for a long time, so that's mostly the way I think. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to invoke the Python interpreter, but we're going to use this -m and specify PDB so that we load this in a special way. So what is this all about? Before we actually do it, let's do oh. Okay, -m. Okay, so run a library and module as a script. That's really cryptic, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to load the script that we're working with into the debugger in an interactive fashion. That's what the -m is going to do in this particular case. So to get rid of the, I didn't want there to be too much mystery there. Okay, so we see this prompt. We're in PDB. That's great. Doesn't tell us a whole lot yet. From any point in here, when you start to need help, you throw in a question mark and you can start to get help on these things. There's a couple of things that I'd like to point out with this. We've got, there are shortcuts. You'll see like there's LL here. I use that constantly. LL is short for long list. R is short for restart. H is short for help, and so on. So you've got these short versions of all these commands. You'll find me using S rather than, you find me using S rather than step and using N rather than next. And so now we're going to take a look at what these things are. If we do just an L, which is the same thing as list, you can start to, like, let's say that the long listing gives you everything. You can also say list 1 through 5. If you only want to see those, you can say list 1 through 1000 to see, in this case, the full file. We're gonna also see right up here, line 2 has this little arrow in it. So that's basically telling us where the point of execution is right now. So I'm going to say next, showing me what it just executed. I'm gonna list it, jump down to there. Now I'm gonna do the same thing. Jump down to there, jump down to there, jump down to there. So now we're at the bottom of this thing. Is everybody capturing what's happening? Somebody describe to me what you think is happening there. Let me do it. I'm going to keep going a little bit and we'll see what happens. Okay. Let's start it again.
Are you running through the steps? Is that?
It's the, when Python goes to load a module, it reads from the top down and basically loads all the references that are at that first level. So it hasn't really started executing anything yet. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start stepping into things so that, like if I did ends that whole time, so I was just saying next, 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 you know, if I drop out of here so in this case, I did S's, and I still made it all the way down to the bottom. NS, it didn't care. It's stepping through and loading all the references. It's all the stuff in the namespace. It's capturing all that stuff. And so now from here, I'm going to step. Ah, look at that. So now it. Okay, so I'll do this a bunch of times so that everybody can see this happening. But I stepped in, I got down to line 27, and then I was saying S. So it's step in, step in, step in. S is stepping into a thing, N is next. From here, I could continue to do that. If I do a step, so now it's showing that I'm stepping into this thing, I'm executing that. I'm going to, let's take a look at what X is. What if I hit X here, now I haven't executed this line yet. So if I hit X, the interpreter, I think at this point is gonna say, don't know what that is. So X, nope, no name. But if I do an N, and now I'm one line past that, if I say X, okay, X is now defined. Now I'm going to say N again. Oh, I should have been saying S there, sorry. Yeah, I think I might have dropped back out. Yeah, okay. So we're going to do this again because I was, step in, step. Okay, I'm here. Don't have that yet. Step. Now I have it. Here's where I am. I'm going to step into 1. So I'm in 1. If I just do a long listing, it just shows me the scope that I'm in. If I want to see the whole thing, I can give myself a range. So now we can see that the pointer's on line 7, and we're going to continue to step in. Okay, so now I'm about to execute this thing. I probably don't have it yet. Sure enough, I don't have it. Step again. Now I have it. Now the interesting thing here is let's take a look at, if I want to see back there on line 3, I have a definition of X, but my scope has changed. Oh, I don't have that anymore. I'd have to change my code in a certain way in order to get access to something like that. So we're starting to see some of the namespace stuff that happens when you're dealing with a stack. And this is a great, like take a simple program, load it into PDB, and you're seeing the way the interpreter is thinking about your code, which is tremendously helpful. Just any piece of code, you load it like that, and you can really start to see what it's doing. And in fact, I even think that this gives you more of an insight working like this. That's not true. I was going to say it's better than even something like a GUI like PyCharm, but that's not true, because PyCharm will show you when stuff is going in and out of scope, things will disappear, so you can set things up and maybe get more insight that way. But both of them are really good. Okay, so now if as you saw, I just issued this thing called where, and I'm getting the whole stack. Now here's where I was suggesting that there's an upside and like an upside and an upside down sort of way of thinking about things. So most of the times when I think about the stack, I think literally about, like the plates and, vegetables and nuts and things, and you're creating variables. You put another plate that represents calling into another function, and then you return from the function in and out, all that stuff, and you're working through that stack. In this case, I'm going to go, I have access to Y, but I don't have access to X. But if I say up, now look what it did. Now, this is so cool. This just happened here. This is so cool because I just jumped to another part in the stack by telling the interpreter, the debugger, to go up. This is the inversion. So the stack is growing down. So we're here, every time you call in to another thing, the way they decided to define this thing, the stack grows from this point. And actually, I think that's like if you were to look up on Wikipedia on a bunch of different places, that's usually the way they show it. You know, they'll show the stack frames growing down and not growing up. So I just went up, which means I went to the previous calling frame. And now I have access to X, but I don't have access to Y. And now I can say, oh, now I just jumped it down back to a different part of the stack. And I can do the same thing again. What do I have access to? Not that, but I have access to that. So you're able to, with this, inspect the entire stack frame. You're able to dynamically move through it and look at different parts of it. Like, you're not always going to have PyCharm. You're going to be working on a system that it's got server code, you know, it's a Django or it's a Flask project or something like that, and you have to SSH into it, and you only have a console, and you pretty much only have PDB. There are others out there that do this sort of thing, but you're pretty much going to be here. And it's really useful to have this sense of things. So now we're going to do, what's a really good thing to show? We're going to continue in, and I want to get into this function right here and play with a couple of different things. Okay, we're there. I'm going to say step, step, step. Okay, we're now about to go into long loop. I'm going to step into that, and we're rushing right in. So now I'm going to.
When you start, are you always starting like in whatever's your top, and then you say step?
Yeah. So you're starting with, well, see, that was part of what I was describing when we first launched the interpreter, and it every time I hit either an S or an N, it went to the next defined thing. And so it scoped out its namespace, and then it got to the bottom. And in this case, you know, I've got the main. You know, if the name of the program is main, then you're going to call this. So yes, if I answered the question. Cool. Okay, so now we're here, and we can start to look at. Do I have I yet? I don't think so. No, I don't. But if we go just a little bit further. Okay, so now I is defined. I can continue this way for a long time. And it's going to do this tight little for loop forever and ever, but I'm going to get a little nuts doing this, waiting for 77 to roll up. So I can do something like, actually even better, we saw how much I had to walk through this. So I'm going to quit out of here, and I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to say that I want a breakpoint on, let's say 20. Okay, so breakpoint 1 set there. And I'm just going to say continue. Okay, where am I? Okay, did everybody catch that? I dropped back out, and I said, I got in, and I identified a line that I wanted to go to, and I said, set a breakpoint there. I didn't have to step all over the place. I said, just get there. Okay, so we're there. And now I'm still in the situation where if I do this a few times, now I have an I defined, but I still don't want to, you know, go through this whole thing of going to 777. So we can set this is a really cool way to provisionally or conditionally do things with the debugger. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a condition based on that breakpoint that I set on line 20. And we're going to say that condition on breakpoint 1, because that's the number of the breakpoint. And we're going to say I is equal to 775, let's say. Okay, new condition set for breakpoint 1. Okay, so now I is set to 0. I can cycle through here. We can do this. We can get up a little bit so that we can see that I is up to 5 now. Okay, now I'm going to hit continue. And now when I hit I, we're at 7075. So we just zipped through that whole thing and fast forwarded to this conditionally so that now we can stop and we can do other things. I can continue to roll through this. Okay, it's getting interesting. About to raise an exception. There it is, kaboom, we raised the terrible exception. So in your code, you know, this was trying to, you know, this was me trying to simulate a situation where, like, obviously we can see that there's this thing, this exception, this terrible bug that's here. But you don't know that until you've poked around in your code a little bit and you're realizing, oh, this thing gets into this range of 700 and something. And I don't want to do this a million times. I want to bounce all the way to 775 and then start rolling forward and seeing what happens after that. For some reason, 777 is the big problem. So now you have a clue, and now you can start to work with something. This isn't the only way to use PDB. In fact, when you work on something like a project with like a Django or a framework style project, you can do something like this instead. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to load this in the Python interpreter, and we've got this breakpoint set, and I can have it basically stop us here and bring us into PDB at that point when that thing gets hit. And you'll even, you'll use this sort of thing in a Django project all the time. One thing you don't do in this case is you don't load this because we're actually having the code itself take care of that. So you don't load PDB at the command line. Okay, so look at that. It gets to that line and it stopped because it stopped and it dropped us into the Python debugger. So now we're kind of in the same scenario we were before. We could set a breakpoint here, we could set a conditional on the breakpoint, and then we could roll forward to 775. That's most of what I wanted to show you with regard to using PDB. PyCharm does a lot of these same things. I was hoping to flip the classroom at this point and have somebody drive and bring up PyCharm either with this code or with any code that they had on their machine that they wanted to inspect, and we could spend some time with that. But basically, you've got things like, you know, you can watch variables, you can set breakpoints, you can do conditional breakpoints, you can do all those same sorts of things, and you've got a big GUI integrated environment that shows you all that stuff at the same time. But yeah, so that's mostly what I wanted to get out.
It's more controllable.
It's more controllable. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Well, that's it for tonight. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, you guys.